Hello, my name is Jeff, and today I would like to speak to you about genetically modified food. But specifically, I don't really want to talk about genetically modified food. I want to talk about how we talk about genetically modified food. It's a very tense issue, and before somebody really gets into this kind of conversation, I believe that it's important that we tackle some very specific ideas and concepts that are inherent in this type of technology. And it's very important that we be educated, and that way we can clear away some of the clutter on both sides that are prone to an excessive amount of rhetoric. But to understand genetically modified food, first we have to understand genetic engineering. And before we can understand genetic engineering, we have to understand genetics. So, this is DNA. DNA is the basic building blocks of life. Every single living thing on the planet is made up of DNA. Every human being, every plant, every animal. And all DNA is a combination of 4 different nucleic acids and an extremely long series of code that tells it to make me, to make you, to make our dogs, to make the plants that we eat. And that is, in essence, the building blocks of what life is. And it does this miraculously enough with just this simple basic code. Now, genetic engineering is where a scientist can take some of this code and he can change it, or he can take some out, or he can add some in. And it really is as simple as adding, subtracting, or changing simple nucleic acids. 4, just 4. And sometimes this can seem like a very scary and intimidating sort of messing around with nature, but it is an extremely precise and effective way of doing this through science. And the issue of genetic engineering raises a great deal of concerns, not the least of which is the emotional response to what many would perceive as messing around with nature. Right now, in the cells in our body, we're mutating. And in fact, the more we age, the more we mutate. And eventually, many times, these mutations will lead to cancer. That's where cancer comes from. It's mutation in our cells due to environmental factors. Now, in nature, plants and animals mutate constantly. And this happens throughout our very diverse biology and ecosystem. It's very, very natural. And in fact, if you were to look at any specific plant or animal or human being, you could never say that it was genetically pure, because there is no such thing. It does not exist. We constantly are mutating, we constantly change. In that way, on a molecular level, there is no difference between something that is genetically modified and something that is naturally mutated inside ecology. But there's also the matter of geneticists taking a gene from something else and putting it into a plant or an animal. And this evokes horrifying images like glowing cats, ooh, and monster plants. But again, we have to understand a few things about nature. You and I, we share 50% the exact same genetic code as a banana. As a banana. The building blocks to make me, me, and you, 50% of that is the exact same thing as a banana, a piece of fruit. So the notion of taking a gene from one species and putting it into another, which is just a simple matter of code, is the same thing as using copy and paste on a computer, and it really isn't any different. Bananas. With this information, I hope then that when we begin to talk about GMOs, we understand the similarity to our natural world is a lot closer than many people actually understand. To paraphrase Brian Dunning, we must examine each plant on its own merits. If you take a book, and whether that book is written on a typewriter or a computer, doesn't make the book better or worse. Just the same thing if a plant is mutated through traditional crossbreeding or through genetic modification. It doesn't change whether or not the plant is good or bad. It stands on its own merits. In that same line of thinking, I feel it's utmost importance we make this distinction between GMO in general and specific crops. The question, are GMOs safe, is relevant. And it's a bad question. It doesn't make any sense. It's like asking, is riding in a car safe? Well, there's no easy answer to that. And there's no basic, simple truth that we can actually point to and say yes or no. It doesn't make sense. So because of that, we have to look at every single one of these on their own merits. For example, right now, when we start to look at what we've accomplished with genetic engineering, we have, for the past 3 years, a treatment that will remove and completely eliminate a specific type of leukemia. We have a transgenic crop that's being developed right now that will, in theory, by just turning on a gene that was simply off, not inserting anything new, just turning on something that was sleeping inside the genetic code of rice, can possibly feed 2 million people that every year in the Philippines would die of vitamin A deficiency. That's a big deal. We should not ignore these life-saving techniques. Neither should we throw caution to the wind. These are things that we really need to have a dialogue about, and I hope that with the right kind of education and consideration that we can actually communicate about this responsibly and in a highly educated and respectful manner. Thank you.